Hi, everyone. As Chris said, I'm Cory Bangert, Vice President of Sales at Influential. To get this started, during a 2021 survey, almost 40% of respondents in the United States said they purchased in live streams because of great deals. Meanwhile, 38% said their main reason for using live stream for shopping was to discover new products, while 37% did so to learn more about new products. In addition, 31% of US shoppers reported using this channel because of the exciting shopping experience. China has revolutionized the live shopping space, leading innovation for multiple years with increased popularity across the board. Their live stream selling market grew from 3 billion to 171 billion in just 3 years. In the US, the live stream market is estimated to be worth 35 billion by 2024. So today I'm really excited to chat with Christine White. As a company, Ulta Beauty has done a lot in the live shopping space, including partnerships with Supergreat, TikTok Live Beta, Meta, and from their own site. I'm thrilled to hear her perspective, learn more about where Ulta Beauty has seen success, encountered challenges, and how she sees this space evolving. But before we get started, I'd like to share more about Christine. She is Ulta Beauty's head of content and media strategy, overseeing the when and where to tell the brand's stories with a focus on driving brand affinity, engagement, and creating the most meaningful and relevant connections with consumers. As a leading digital authority and seasoned marketer dedicated to effective and engaging storytelling, Christine has spent nearly 2 decades within the beauty and lifestyle industries. A graduate of FIT, she found herself immersed in early emerging media platforms, running a successful blog alongside work in communications. These parallels ultimately led to her career, where she's guided digital content and marcom strategies for brands, agencies, and publishers, including NARS Cosmetics, Coty Prestige, Attention, and Refinery 29. I've just said a lot about Christine, so I'm going to let her tell you more about Ulta Beauty before we dive into the live shopping specifics.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Cory. Excited to be here today to talk live shopping. I caught a little bit of the last session, which was super fun to hear from the folks at Network. But Ulta Beauty, has dove into this arena as well and really taken a test and learn approach as we think about live content, live shopping, social commerce. So excited to chat a little bit more about that.
Awesome. So do you want to talk us through how you've got started with live shopping and where you're at currently?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, I think you have heard and will hear a lot of this, but the pandemic really accelerated, right? The need for digital content, live content, and a way to connect with folks at home in ways that, people probably had on their roadmaps, but definitely needed to hit that trigger button in order to, get it out into the consumer's hands and into their homes. So that was absolutely a catalyst for us. First with live content, a lot of our platforms kind of really quickly catching up there as we think about the ability to integrate frictionless shopping experiences, thinking about this idea of, edutainment, right? This, great inspiring way to find different ways to connect that's entertaining, that's educational, and that allows you to take action if you want to, right? So really it's that idea of frictionless that was super appealing to us as a retailer and as a brand of brands. Digital experiences, as the industry likes to call it, is something that we've long been on a journey on of connecting the digital and the physical footprint. So this is just, part of that journey.
That's awesome. And did you see, as you were going through like the pandemic and looking to connect with people, that especially when people were not obviously stores not even being open or feeling safe going into stores, like, did you notice how you connected with your audiences through live shopping, like felt different than e-commerce and whatnot, where they were, obviously going to your website and whatnot, but like, how did you see that relationship with your consumers evolve?
Yeah, I think consumers have always come to Ulta Beauty for access, right? That really is the premise of our retail footprint of accessibility, access to products that are mass, that are prestige, and everything in between. And this is really nothing different, right? So it is another space of access to commerce and really meeting them where they are. So if that means that, they're at home, they're in bed, and they're, on social media, that we're able to offer them that experience to shop in that moment. So that's definitely a piece and part of it, and really offers them choice, right? So for folks that, maybe weren't comfortable because of the pandemic, and kind of as we emerge out of it, those are things that are always going to really be now foundation to how I think consumers continue to want to shop. It's not just about impulse anymore. It really is just about creating, the dynamic for them to be able to shop wherever, to shop anywhere.
Cool. So I mentioned that you guys have worked with a number of different platforms, including your own website. So it would be helpful to walk through kind of how your experience with each has differed, and if there's a preference in working with one over another.
Yeah, I think, our whole approach to live streaming and live commerce is test and learn, right? So really, how can we think about, it was mentioned on the last session, the value proposition, and it's a little bit different as you think about all of the sources there, right? Network is great at the scarcity model, and that absolutely is an incentive to consumers. It always is. It's a fundamental kind of principle of consumer behavior. And it makes a ton of sense. Something like social networks and their ability to draw in large community is definitely a plus. As you think about your owned and operated channels, you know who those consumers are. You have a lot of data on them. And so those are definitely upsides to owned and operated channels. For us, we're a retailer, an e-commerce channel first. We're not a content provider to our consumer right now. So the biggest hurdle and challenge of owned and operated is changing behavior, right? So coming to Ulta.com, coming to our app to engage in content experiences is something we have to start to change the behavior on. So how do we incentivize that? How do we change that behavior? And be able to offer experiences that are both, right? That idea of content and commerce. So we fully recognize, that as that obstacle and ability to test and learn a little bit there. We think about things like the partnership we did last year with Super Great, right? Super Great, for those that don't know, is a super highly engaged, awesome beauty community full of people who love beauty, who are super positive, supporters of one another. And so we learn a lot about how you think about that hyper niche community and what that means from a community building perspective to be able to drive commerce. So really that community angle and weigh in. And then as you think about, like I said, with social, just the opportunity to capitalize on their technology, capitalize on their built-in audiences, and what can we do there, even as we think about kind of extended marketing strategies outside the live moment as well.
And then I guess when you're looking at the challenges of live shopping at this point, like what improvements could you see as like a holy grail, right? Like you're saying you're in a test and learn, you're going through these processes, you're seeing very different experiences and like a very niche audience, like Super Great versus TikTok, where there could be much larger audiences. And in terms of, I know that when we spoke, it wasn't about the ROI so much, but like where do you see this kind of getting better for Ulta Beauty specifically?
Yeah, I think, at some point we will obviously have to consolidate, right? We can't continue down the road of kind of the test and learn and partnering in multiple capacities, because at the end of the day, if truly we're talking about live commerce, right, that does become an end goal at some point. So really being able to divert all of that will have to be kind of decisions to be made down the line. And I think as we think about improvements, it is a little bit of the Wild West right now with experiences like this, right? They all make sense for different reasons. And why you see Asia being so successful, we could have a whole conversation about different cultures and consumer dynamics there. But fundamentally, there are a few players that do all the things, right? As we think about payment, as we think about commerce, as we think about content, those are giant aggregated super apps. Whereas in the States, we have lots of micro and niche communities within kind of spread across. So I think that those dynamics are some of the hurdles that not just us, but really anybody is going to face as you think about kind of amassing, large scale. If you really want to use live commerce as, a true commerce source in the future.
So you'd mentioned, Ulta not necessarily being known for content specifically. So what did you use to entice viewers to tune in to live shopping? And like, what's kind of your hook in getting them to tune in live? And how are you kind of approaching that differently than them maybe checking out the content after the fact?
Yeah, I think, definitely Ulta is known for a lot of content through social, but as we think about places like our website specifically, right, most of our traffic is because people want to come and shop, which is a great thing. So really, how do we lean in with that as the primary objective? And really, lettering on kind of that value proposition, right? What is the exchange? What do you want to know to be able to use products more effectively? So, we started with things that we know can translate. So as we think about things that we're selling out on TikTok, right? How do we take that and know that we're already seeing an uptick in commerce and inventory and people traffic to our site from even just organic content on TikTok, and think about how to capitalize on those opportunities on our own channels, right? Bring on expertise, whether it's some of our brand partners, our founders, experts, makeup artists, estheticians, hairstylists, to be able to give consumers a little bit more to say, you love this product and you've seen, it in action from your favorite creators and influencers. Now here's a little bit more about it. Here's how you can build a routine. Here's how you can build a regimen, a complete look. To really be able to extend the opportunity of what could be a single product into an entire potential routine. So that has been proved to be really fruitful for us, just as we think about, right place, right time. What is the consumer mindset of consumers? How do we capitalize on what's happening in culture to be drivers for what our own channel experiences have been?
And when we were talking, you had mentioned that live has been really helpful in helping you understand the audiences. Like, how are you seeing that differ across the different platforms? And are there any audiences that have really popped as a result of doing live where you're like, holy cow, I had no idea these people were interested, and now we're able to utilize that and make it really efficient way to kind of retarget someone you didn't even know about?
Yeah, exactly. I think even if you don't capitalize on commerce in that moment with them, right, you gain and we have gained pretty sizable audiences in the tens of thousands that we're absolutely able to remarket to. So thinking about, being like, hey, did you see that mascara, right? And in the live, and serving them content post experience that reminds them that, oh yeah, you might want to check this out now, right? You might not have been in the mindset because you were on the platform and truly engaged in what we were talking about and didn't want to click through the purchase. But really it is that remarketing strategy for us right now that has proved to be super effective in gaining their attention and keeping that attention, right? Because now we know something about them and their shopping behaviors, even outside of live content, that we can engage with them a little bit differently. So that's been super beneficial.
Awesome. And probably helpful as your test and learn stage for you to actually have learnings to share with the powers that be.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. So I think that live shopping really has to come with an authenticity, right? Like if someone's going to be talking about a great mascara, they have to be someone who is considered to be an expert in the field. So how are you choosing talent for when you're working on, and like, does that differ across platform?
Yeah, absolutely. Talent, in my opinion, is the number one for superior live content. Just as you think about entertainment, right? As you think about being entertained and, will TikTok be successful at live commerce or not? Truly, right, they are an entertainment platform and it is about fun. So that's what people are primarily going there for. So you have to be really mindful about that, right? So whereas we know TikTok is a place for things like hauls, right? And truly hyper relevant trends, of really digging into some of that social listening for those platforms, of making sure we're pulling it out at the most relevant moment and selecting talent that we know that can have those conversations. It's going to be a little bit different on our own platforms where we have opportunity to be a little bit more masterclass based or a little bit more education based, because that's a lot of what that consumer is coming to us for, right? That yes, they want the product, but they might want to know more about it. Whereas that's not necessarily how they're interfacing on social. So talent is extremely important. We've had great success with, some of our protein members, some of our Ulta Beauty Collective, which is our year-long influencer partnership that we have. and people who are really dynamic, right? There is a level of understanding someone's energy and ability to engage an audience, but who is also technical and can have a conversation and look at the chat and comment and be able to do both simultaneously, to be able to take cues from us, the brand team, and making sure they're kind of staying on time, or they're hitting key points. There's a lot of technicality that goes into the background of being a host. So it's a lot at you at once, and still being able to be a super dynamic personality, truly at its core, is kind of that secret sauce to talent. So, we've done a little bit of both across the gamut. Our influencers and creators have definitely built in communities already. And that goes a long way too.
Probably to help with the engagement of it all as well.
Yeah, precisely.
So when you are having talent, how involved are you and how they lead the event? Is it kind of a free for all where you're like, we trust them, go for it? Or is it like a script? Like, how much are you letting them kind of lead the show versus your input? As you mentioned, them having to be listening to, I'm like, imagine them wearing like a headphone, being like, don't do that, do this.
No, it's 100% co-creation, right? Because live events are just that, they're live. So there is a level of really being able to engage what's happening live and not be so scripted that you can't move beyond that. So there is flexibility that everyone needs to be able to have in the process. So it's informing, it's informing folks of kind of, what are the key things to be hitting on? What do you need to know to really feel confident in being able to deliver authentically, right? In your own voice, in your own words, so that it is in the way that you would be speaking to it. When someone gets super hyped up about a product, you can tell, right? And you get super hyped up on the other side of it. So you want to be able to feel that really authentic and natural energy, but still be able to kind of deliver on what the brand expectations are. And again, we're a brand of brands, so it adds complexity to it, as well as we think about our individual brand partners and the products.
Well, I feel like beauty influencers have the most authority, at least in my life. It's like they say something and I'm like, sure, buy it right now.
Yes. That's how I've acquired all of the mascaras I just bought last week.
I know. So, I think I have a lifetime of mascaras in my drawer.
Still not immune to it.
I'm glad to hear it's not just me. So when you, like, in working with talent, are you using people that are kind of brand ambassadors, or is like a one-off? I mean, I know they're coming from what you mentioned, like being part of the Ulta collective, but is it a one-off? Do you think that episodic makes more sense? Is it like seasonal events? I know you guys have things like 21 Days of Beauty and whatnot. Like, what's the appropriate cadence, do you think, for live shopping with a brand?
Yeah, I definitely think if it's something where you want to change behavior, consistency is super key, right? It's going to build you the scale and the continuity to really understand what stays consistent, right? And then the variables that you want to be testing and learning across episodes. We're not there yet, right? We don't do that now. So definitely something to take our own advice from, but that would be a goal of ours, kind of in our roadmap. But as you think about, your key moments, those are going to be super important too. So we know our consumer loves 21 Days of Beauty. We know that that's always something, the calendar always leaks, on social media prior to the event. People always get super hyped up about it. So we know that those moments in time absolutely make a ton of sense. And then, yes, as you think about things like gift giving moments and just inherent consumer moments where they are looking for someone to help curate and guide them a little bit more, definitely able to see some of those spikes in engagement and interest too. So
I'm imagining like men at holiday.
Precisely. Like, here's all the things you need.
Right. And they're like, check. Your ROI goes crazy.
Add to cart, all done.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess, I know we had said test and learn, you're defining audiences, like where do you see this as like defined success when you're looking at this, like overarching, and you run a live event, like where were you like, yes, we nailed that?
Yeah. I mean, I think, like I said, commerce for us right now is not a number one priority. It's definitely a consideration as we look at KPIs, like what does drive people? What are the SKUs that have driven, the most sales or the most add to cart? So that's definitely something we look at. It's just not our primary indicator at this stage. Like I said, when we get to a point where we are consistently churning out kind of live commerce moments, that will become more of a North Star for us. Right now, it really is engagement. So understanding talent, like I said, and the dynamic nature of that. How can you engage an audience? So looking at things like engagement through comments, through chat. We've tested things like promotion, right? In the moment, does that drive, a different action to be able to even add to cart as a starting point, right? Even if it doesn't fully equate to the checkout experience. So for us, a lot of it is engagement because we know right now our strategy is focused on remarketing. So if we're able to do that, that looks like a successful event to us.
When you're doing a promotion versus not, are you seeing different audiences engage?
Absolutely, right?
Yeah.
Because it's a different value proposition as you think about discount. I think they said it in the last session too, right?
Yeah, you can only go down, you can't go back up.
Exactly. So those are things you want to be really mindful of and making sure that it's on something that's really worth it. The scarcity model absolutely does work. That's why brands launch limited edition. That's why we have these hyper relevant collaborations and collections. We know that there is absolutely a wide market for that. So those are definitely dynamics that we know can create the value exchange. But there are a ton of folks out there who truly want to know more about beauty, know more about routine. So education is definitely a growing component of our larger marketing strategy too, as we think about content.
So is, live shopping still being in the pretty nascent stages? What piece of advice would you give to a brand that wants to take the plunge into live shopping?
Yeah, I think it's really understanding what your goal is, right? And starting there and making sure you don't lose sight of that along the way, because you're going to have to learn quite a bit before I think you can truly achieve that goal. And you shouldn't think that one live event is going to do all of the things you expected it to do. So really, as you think about that goal, it probably does require a series of events to really be able to understand and to make tweaks, just like any approach would be, right? You're going to learn something a little bit new each time. So you don't have to start with a massive event and put all of your dollars into it. You can start small and learn a little bit about what works, even with the talent, right? Of even just getting over the barriers of talent and technology will set you up for greater success for your next event. So.
And in terms of like the retargetings, the efficiency and whatnot, like, are you finding that when you're running a live event and are you getting creative that then you're then able to utilize after the fact? Is that still can that still live in an evergreen context and be helpful for you?
Yes, absolutely. I am a huge, I run content strategy. I'm a huge believer in amplification of hero content, right? Of this idea of cutting down content to, snack size and making it be something that can be something that engages, right? Truly through, data and paid media, or even just something you can use organically, right? Of just really valuable content in the exchange and dynamic. Obviously, it's going to depend on the format of your event, what you're talking about. Some things are more evergreen in nature than others, but absolutely think about the live stream as a piece of content that you can use post-event.
Cool. So we have a few questions. So before we dive into those, I just wanted to ask you if there's anything that you want to touch on that, I don't know, as the expert in all things live shopping, and you guys have kind of paved the way, especially within the beauty category. Is there anything that you feel you need to address before we start diving in?
No, I don't think so. I think, just be open to testing and learning and to experiences and opportunities. And, I think everybody will learn a lot.
All right. I think that you're probably right. If you go in and you have all these right away, we're going to get X, Y, and Z. It's kind of having maybe a 5-year plan.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, so we have a question from Abe, and he said, how would you compare TikTok shopping versus Instagram shopping for a small company?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you want to look at what your role on each platform already is, right? And I don't necessarily mean the role your own channels play, but what is your consumer already talking about you on those platforms, right? And I think that's going to inform a lot about how you can show up and how users are already engaging with your brand on their own terms. And I say that for a lot of things, but definitely applies to live shopping for sure, because it's going to allow you to lean into how to develop your live programming, right? What are those consumers looking for that are you're already talking about? What are the, the key trends, the key themes? And so those are going to be some of the big things. Obviously, TikTok and Instagram have different algorithms, absolutely, and ways in which they draw audiences to those experiences. So those are just also going to be considerations and drivers, even just in the pre and post, right? Even in terms of how you're driving folks to those events, whether you're using own channels, whether you're using paid media, that's all going to look a little bit different. So take those considerations into mind, even as you think about how you've created paid programs, just, paid social programs for each platform as well, and how those react differently for you as a small business. Talent is also going to be really key. You want to find people that make sense for your brand, absolutely, but also really make sense for the platform. So Instagram is going to feel very different in nature, a little bit more elevated, right? A little bit more education based than something like TikTok. Sorry, there is a car outside. Okay, turn it off for a second. So that's going to be a big dynamic too, right? A TikTok creator is going to know how to engage with that audience. You also have different features on the platforms in terms of incentives for creators. So those will be different engagement touch points as well to think about.
And then, like, based on the platform, what's the time, like the sweet spot for a live event, do you think? Because I'd imagine that like TikTok has a much longer average time spent per session. I think it's 51 minutes because of the content algorithm. Whereas Instagram, it's like the follower count is the algorithm. So kind of where are you seeing that differentiate across those specific channels?
Absolutely. And I think you'll find that those, as you think live, aren't that different, right? Because the consumer behavior is still catching it at any moment in that session. So as we think about, sweet spot, longer is definitely better. And you have to keep in mind that you're going to see the constant fluctuation of people moving in and out. So that's why having a really dynamic personality that can keep that energy throughout is going to be more of the key than it is about kind of the length of it. So I think you're going to find that both something like an Instagram, a Facebook, TikTok are going to be about the same. We've seen a ton of success between 30 and 45 minutes. You shouldn't expect people to sit through the whole thing, right? And that shouldn't necessarily be the intent. But the talent really is going to be the key there.
Awesome. So we have another question from Brendan, and he wants to know, as live commerce matures, do you think the marketing teams will run and manage it, or will it be invested in and managed more as a sales channel like the O&O?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think we work quite a bit with our digital innovation team, right? They bring a lot of the opportunities. And then obviously from a marketing and a content perspective, that's an important balance, right? So I think it's both. And I think it should always be a co-creation process, because the talent, right? The content, the flow of that programming requires someone who understands entertainment, someone who understands consumer behavior. That's not something that the sales team understands. They understand the end result, right? They know what they need to drive. So that's why absolutely aligning on those objectives, but really giving the freedom to be able to say, this is how we're going to bring that to life in the content is going to be extremely important for live success.
Awesome. Yeah, I should never be involved in anything creative. I'll tell you that. As a seller, it's good to keep those separated. Juan has a question. What has been Ulta's biggest challenge to make live shopping a seamless experience, both internally within Ulta's e-commerce operation and externally with consumers?
Can you repeat that? Sorry, I think you cut out for a second. I think it was on my end.
What has been Ulta's biggest challenge to make live shopping a seamless experience, both internally within Ulta's e-commerce operation and externally with consumers?
Yeah, I think, we have to have mutual objectives. So really understanding this idea of creating seamless experiences, right? Creating that frictionless experience has always been a shared principle for us in reaching the consumer, right? At the end of the day, that's going to be the most important part and dynamic of this. So for us, that's really been key to a lot of the success that we've seen, is that alignment right there. So really being able to give marketing the opportunity to understand that consumer most dynamically as we think about that connection, but then ensuring that, you know, we know sort of the goals and objectives of our e-commerce team, and the ability to think through how to both manage those expectations as well as scenarios in which we can reach them or potentially improve.
Awesome. Juan, I had another question. Based on Ulta's experience these last couple of years, do you foresee Ulta's future live shopping focus happening more with social media apps like TikTok, with live shopping apps like Network, or via your own website or app?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, you know, as we think about our built-in community, right, and the heart of our beauty community definitely sits in our O&O. So that will always be our most important experiences, because we have the opportunity to connect them in all of our spaces, right? As we think about the physical, the digital, the app experience. So that is absolutely something that we want to be able to give to consumers. But you know, our presence on things like our social platforms is equally as important right now as we think about being able to drive and think about absolutely that acquisition, and really thinking about the dynamic audiences that we're able to bring in. So this idea of Ulta Beauty being a destination for commerce, right, and starting to change the behavior of being a destination for content and commerce is going to be key as we think about how we leverage our social platforms right now. So it's absolutely both a short-term and a long-term approach for us.
And then in terms of like, how are you, I would assume that you're spending a lot when you are running it on your O&O from the social channels to drive to that, because that's obviously how you're getting the awareness. Is that like the main focus for you in these, when driving to the O&O and running it on your platform versus a social channel?
Yep, absolutely. So, you know, all of those things are going to start there, right? But you need them to be able to take an action, to be able to continue to engage with that same person who saw the message originally on social. So those are just key considerations as you think about the role of social, you know, role of your email, and those touch points of reminding them, getting them there, right, and keeping them engaged, because social is kind of an of the moment type of experience. So it's very much how we think about it. And that's why I say, you know, when you're on live there, you're coming in and out. Whereas, you know, if you're going to sign up for something on a brand's owned channel, it's probably going to be a very different experience. You're probably a little bit more committed to that. So those are just considerations as we think about the role of channels and the role of amplification pre-event.
Totally. Imagine more of like a loyalist on the O&O.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we have a question from Wayne, and he says, have noticed in store that Ulta is moving away from their offerings for men. Did your online business help you move in this direction?
Yeah, I mean, our men's strategy is a super important piece of our business, kind of long term, right? So as we think about what that looks like from a physical footprint, as well as what that experience looks like online. So that's absolutely something that, you know, our e-commerce destination is actively bringing in new brands, especially as we think about really being able to support smaller and emerging brands as a big part of that, right? Being in over 1,300 stores puts a strain on supply chains for small businesses. So it's absolutely an opportunity that we see our e-commerce site, and knowing that, you know, again, that flexibility, more flexibility and accessibility we're able to bring brands like that is proving to be really successful, both for brand owner, you know, and brand partner, as well as us.
And I have a question. So when you're talking about like the emerging audiences that you've seen from live shopping, which ones have been the most surprising, and how have you activated against it? Like, has there been content that you've shifted to be like, wow, we actually, you know, you leading content being like, we've only been going down this route and we should probably be doing more of X, Y, or Z?
Yeah, I think what we've actually tended to find is a lot more of the education content brings in a different consumer, a little bit more than we think of things like, I saw this on TikTok, or those impulse centric type of purchases where they're trending on social media, right? And as we think about driving impulse purchase. So I think that that's been an telling and not super surprising for me, but a telling insight as we think about what drives consumers sometimes. And like I said, it's not always in the moment that we're seeing this as an insight, but that educational live content has absolutely proven to be some of our more successful remarketing audiences. So that right there, right? As you think about the consumer journey and this idea of, I learned a lot, maybe I wasn't quite ready to buy right then, but
Totally.
now that I've taken it in and I've been remarketed to.
Well,
Absolutely.
again, I think that actually really makes sense as you were discussing a content strategy with Evergreen too, because as you keep that and someone needs to know, I don't know, their favorite mascaras, then you can always just be like, great, this content already exists and we're able to repurpose it.
Exactly. Yep.
Well, that's really all I have. Are there anything oh, there's Chris. Saved by the bell.
That just saved the day.
Here he is.
Christine,
actually,
thank you so much. I really appreciate this. Was really, really interesting. And I'm sure everyone participating, it felt the same.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys.
Can I ask a quick question before you go? So, obviously with live shopping, it's about personalities and being able to sell things. How do you guys figure out what influencers make sense? Because it takes a special kind of person to run a live show. And are you guys looking for variety all the time? Or are you guys looking to build in, sort of like, those staples that you see on HSN and QVC sort of thing?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both, right? Of having some consistency. Those folks well, right? We can create the right rapport. We can create the dynamic. We know what works. We know where we need to lean in, where they're really great. But given that we are across categories, right? We sell all the things as it relates to makeup. There are going to be nuances. You can't expect one personality to be able to sell you cosmetics and hair care and skincare and bath and body, right? So, and you can't also expect them to have the level of expertise and authenticity to that consumer as well. So that's why having a couple folks that, a couple for each of those that can do that, but then also being able to bring dynamic people in for events, right? Like partnering with Michaela for 21 Days of Beauty. She used to work at Ulta Beauty. That's where she started before she quit her job to become the biggest, TikTok beauty star on the planet. So there really still is a very true and authentic connection as she thinks about her love for that event, our products and things like that. So definitely dynamic. So it's a little bit of both.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. I have to say, I got more feedback about excitement of you being on the show than anybody else. So thank you for taking the time to be with us. It was a great session.
A live shopping celeb.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks,
Absolutely.
Christine.
Thank you. And thank you,
Bye.
Cory. That was wonderful.